Hey, Matt, man, thank you so much for joining us.
I appreciate you having me on. I'm looking forward to the opportunity to chat with you a little bit.
Yeah, man, I'm really, really excited and curious about your journey. You grew up in Kentucky. Can you talk about like growing up in Kentucky and your playing career, and when did coaching and player development become your goal?
So for me, I'm actually a Kentucky transfer. I was raised in the northwest corner of Ohio, and then chasing basketball, I ended up here in Lexington. Starting in about 2018, I moved down here and have quickly fallen in love with the bluegrass, with the basketball, and just the living in general. But for me, I was a high school player. Had a pretty uh, relatively successful high school career at Bryan High School in the northwest corner of Ohio. Went on and played 2 years of junior college basketball and finished at NAI school. Was a average player, good enough to help me pay for my education, not good enough to do a whole lot of other stuff with it, but was there's a lot of things that I didn't know, like a lot of young players, where if there would have been maybe a couple other people in my corner kind of helping directed me and how to use my time and energy, I think maybe my career went a little bit different. And that's kind of one of my motivating factors now doing what I do, is just trying to help direct kids in the right direction, because there is just so much out there, and there's people kind of seeking direction.
What made you fall in love with player development?
I tell everyone this, like for me, I love coaching, and coaching is player development, and player development is coaching. If players aren't getting better and improving, I don't think you're doing your job as a coach. So for me, initially it started out chasing coaching, but I'm kind of like a details person and super analytical, and I think that kind of bodes well for scheme X's and O stuff. But I think it even really bodes well for helping become a good player development guy, and really leaning into that space where details and breakdown are a big part of it.
Was becoming a professional coach always your plan?
I always wanted to be a college coach. And then once I got around the college game, and I, like many people, my all I knew of professional basketball was the NBA and what I'd seen on TV. And then once I got into the college space and I started doing some stuff with Adidas and I got to be around NBA coaches, NBA players, and learn about the lifestyle and how it all really works. There was a lot of appeal to me, so started chasing the NBA. NBA never really happened for me, but in chasing it, opened up doors to go coach professionally abroad, and that's kind of where my career has taken me.
You just spoke about Adidas. You come back from the ABCD camp. How was that experience?
It was an incredible experience. Obviously, bringing that camp back after 25 plus years, a lot of history, a lot of nostalgia involved with that. But Sonny Vaccaro was there the whole time. Got the chance to spend some time with him and listen to him speak, which was obviously incredible. Just the type of knowledge and experiences he has, and then obviously an incredible collection of talent. And it was great to see Pierre Rondo and Mason Grivna, two local Kentucky kids, compete at a high level there as well.
How did they compare to the rest of the talent there?
They're definitely, some of the better players without a doubt. Especially, Pierre, as young as he is, really had a great showing, and Mason, same thing, good young player, competed at a high level. Especially when you look at some of them where they're younger players and they're playing with guys who are 2.5, 3 years older than them. And if you would have just watched, you wouldn't have probably known that. So, they had a great showing. Definitely represented the bluegrass well.
So you're coaching professionally overseas. How did your first overseas opportunity happen?
Chasing professional basketball, I got involved doing some stuff with Adidas. Through that, Seth Greenberg was like a partner with Adidas, helping do some camps and whatnot. Seth works for ESPN currently, but was a great coach at Virginia Tech, Long Beach State, etc. I got to know him well through that, and he kind of took a liking to me. His brother Brad is an international coach, has kind of coached all over the globe. Through my relationship with Seth, Brad needed an assistant, a young guy, motivated, whatnot. I had met Brad one time. Seth got us on the phone, and a week later, I was on a plane to Israel to start my first professional coaching job. So, a bit of a whirlwind. You never know where this game may take you, but just like a lot of people, right place, right time, knowing the right person, it all aligned for me to get a great start in my career.
One thing I've noticed about this business is relationships, man. Like building relationships and networking with as many people as you can, and your opportunity can come at any minute, right?
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
Think it really, it's as corny as it sounds, as much you hear it, it's not what you know always, it's who you know. When the time comes, you need to know your stuff, but who you know usually is what gets the ball rolling.
So looking back, what was the biggest break in your career?
The biggest break in my career was probably going to Israel. The Israel Domestic League is a really well thought of league. It's probably one of the top five, six, seven domestic leagues in the world. You know, most of the import players there are former NBA players or former really high level college players. So to break in at that high of a level as an assistant playing against Maccabi Tel Aviv, who plays EuroLeague, Hapoel Jerusalem, all that. I think that legitimized me quite a bit right away, like at least on a resume to break in at that level. And then I would say my other break is just the stuff I do with Adidas that I've been doing for almost a decade now. Since I was an undergrad, I got involved with helping some of their grassroots events, and just being in those places, you just get access to a lot of people and situations and rubbing elbows with people who can really, help your career.
You recently coached professionally in the Czech Republic. What was that experience like?
Incredible. A really good, another really good domestic league. Nimburg is in that league, who plays in Champions League, who's, it's one of probably the 25, 30 biggest clubs in the world outside the NBA. So getting to compete against that high level competition was a great experience. And then we played in our domestic league. So during the week, we played teams from the Czech Republic, and then we played in an international league that was called ENBL. So we got 8 other games where we got to go play 4 home games and 4 away games, kind of all around Europe. So we got to go to England, got to go to Latvia. So I got to go to some new countries as well and compete at a high level with international competition. So really a great experience for me as a head coach, getting to make my own decisions, choosing my own players, all the stuff that goes with being a head coach. Definitely helped progress me personally and professionally.
What was your the biggest adjustment?
The biggest adjustment for me this year is just being, this is my second time being a head coach, but this was a much higher profile league. And so, doing media stuff, answering, I had to talk to sponsors after games and just being pulled in a lot of different directions at once. I think that was really the biggest challenge or biggest adjustment for me, was just balancing your time because there's just so many demands.
What about the differences in style of play?
I would say the physicality in Europe, freedom of movement off the ball isn't a huge. You can really hold people, and off ball screens. There's not really no such thing as an off ball like moving screen or illegal screen. They'll call them on ball screens when it's on ball. Those happen actually a lot, probably more than they do here. But the off ball stuff, when you set like a wide pin down or a flex screen or whatever, it's just an all out fight for the most part. So that's a little bit different. I think the other difference too is just like the lack of timeouts. Here, college basketball, pro basketball, all the media timeouts, and on top of the timeouts, you're given as part of the rules of the game. In Europe, there's just far less timeouts. So you've got to really be able to coach your team on the fly and have prepared, because it's not like college basketball where there's all these timeouts and plenty of times to breathe and make adjustments and do that type of stuff.
What about the differences in coaching? The European guys, American guys, or just foreign guys?
I think in general, the international players that I've coached are all. I think they're in general. There's a little bit more respect for coaches in general, or just respect for authorities in general. I think, as Americans, we're a little bit anti-authority by nature in some ways. But I think just the respect level for coaches, and just yes, sir, I'm going to do what the coach says because he's the coach, is very much still instilled in players there. Obviously, the other big adjustment is, most of them, English is not their first language, and English is my only language. So, thinking about your word choice and what you say and how you explain things, especially in the heat of the moment in a timeout, it's the last play of the game and I'm drawing something up and I have something, I got to really think about what I'm saying, despite being my mind going 100 miles an hour and the pressure and all that goes with it. And so, that's a challenge. So I think that's why, like, everywhere I've been as a head coach, the two spots I've been, I've had a local as my assistant who speaks the language. So any clarity I need to add, I let my assistant do it. But it's definitely a way different thing because as we don't realize sometimes as Americans how much slang we use or how fast we talk and things like that. When that's not your native language, that can be problematic.
The international European basketball, is it more fundamental? I know you said it's more physical, but like as far as fundamental.
I think their base fundamentals, what they're teaching kids young, I think that like traditional fundamentals, pivoting, two-handed chest passes, all of that stuff, I think they do a great job of teaching it to kids young. But I think what happens is they put these kids in a box and it's like this is what basketball is, and there's not a whole lot of space for creativity and freedom for a lot of players. Which as a player development guy and my other side of my basketball life, like I want players to explore and try different things, and how you play and I play and the next guy play is going to be a little bit different and what we're comfortable with and what we like to do. So I would say that's kind of one of the main differences when it comes to like fundamentals.
So what surprised you the most about the game over there?
Uh I really Probably the biggest surprise really is just the how passionate the fans are. Like I knew they were passionate. You see these videos online and all that, but then when you go and live it, I think that's what makes it fun because there's a lot of regionalism when it comes to, or even tribalism, I would call it, when it comes to some of these local teams. Where it'd be like, if we lived in Kentucky, if Kentucky was a country, there's a team in Lexington with a huge budget and all these really good players. And then there's a team in Richmond, and the team in Richmond doesn't have quite the money, but their fans care twice as much. And when they go to play the team in Lexington, they shouldn't win. But when they do, it's a big deal. And it's, 20 minutes down the road. And just that type of regional rivalry and all that. Like growing up in Ohio, in the Toledo area, like the Ohio State Michigan rivalry, like I think that's what makes it kind of fun is just the regionalism, or UK Louisville or whatever. I think that's what makes it fun abroad because some of these countries are just crazy big. When I was in Israel, Israel's the size of New Jersey. All of our bus rides were within 4 hours. So I just think that kind of makes it fun.
What makes international basketball so difficult?
I would say for players, and then for me as an American coach living abroad, is just life outside of the basketball. When you're not practicing or playing games, you're in a place that's wildly different than probably you've ever been, and people don't speak the language. And sometimes just going to the grocery store, putting gas in your car can be a big challenge. It's a challenge when the people you love are 8 hours behind you, and you're going to bed and they're still in the middle of their day, and communication can be hard. And I just think the off the court thing is a definite challenge and an adjustment and just an entirely different way of life.
Would you coach overseas again?
Yeah, for sure. Still considering that for this year. I've got a couple irons in the fire. I've been lucky to spend four seasons coaching abroad in different places around the world. Would never write it off, but if something stateside pops up here late, I would, also be open to staying at home here in the states.
One thing that stands out on your resume is directing NBA pre-draft workouts. How did that come about?
So coaching abroad, you make a lot of relationships with agents, whether they're NBA agents too, or just FIBA, and now with NIL, all that. It's all kind of intertwined. My second coaching job, I was in Albania, uh, coach, and got to know a couple of agents at One Motive Sports. They actually represent Chris Coffey that played at Georgetown, and we just had a great TBT run. And they've had rep some guys from Kentucky. Got to know those guys through coaching. They knew I did player development. Time went on. They had an opening, had reached out to me about my interest. So I spent 3 years working with them, preparing their players for the NBA draft, and got great experience with them. And then had the opportunity to work with another agency this year.
Walk us through a pre-draft workout.
So pre-draft workouts, what I tell everybody is we're studying for the test. Where it's not necessarily, yes, we're trying to improve. Like we're going to spend some time. We want your strengths to be as strong as they've ever been, and when your one or two weaknesses, we want to spend time on. but we're preparing the players to go work out for these teams. You know, the Chicago Bulls are going to fly you in and they're going to work you out in groups of four, 4 to 6 players. And, you know, we kind of know what the Bulls do. They're, you know, these are the drills they do and all that. So we'll work on that stuff. It's a lot of shooting, a lot of 3-on-3 live play, and a lot of like thinking stuff. So we spend a lot of time working on that. So how I've structured pre-draft stuff is, you know, we have these guys from 6 to 10 weeks, just kind of depending on when the agency starts and the caliber of player. So you're with these guys every day. We would do skill workouts in the morning, kind of positional based stuff, working on, you know, pass, dribble, shoot, work on some scheme stuff, you know, NBA actions, that type of thing. Usually go anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half. Guys would take a break and then they'd go do strength and conditioning, agility, mobility stuff with the strength coaches we had during the day. Go home, nap, rest, take some time, and then we'd come back at night and it would just be shooting, all 3-point shooting. We'd shoot anywhere from 40 minutes to probably an hour and 15 minutes. Doing a lot of corner 3-point shooting since the corner three is such a popular shot in the NBA. But just trying to, you know, refine shooting mechanics. How do we take a 36% 3-point shooter to a 39%? Or some of these, you know, even the big guys, you know, I had a guy in pre-draft who never shot a single three in college, but he's still going to have to go out there and shoot 100 threes in front of an NBA team. And it's like, well, he can't go out there and make 8 out of 100. We got to work on these so he can at least show that there's any sort of hope he can become a free throw shooter or whatever it may be. And so doing that type of stuff every day for 6 to 10 weeks. The guys, you know, once the workouts start, they'll fly in and out for a day or two and go to LA and work out for the Lakers, and then come home for 2 days and then go work out for the Bucks or whatever it may be. So it's a really long process, but a really enjoyable process.
What are NBA scouts actually evaluating?
I would say in general, how well you can think the game. Can you guard 1-on-1 and keep someone in front of you? And then, you know, you have to be able to shoot it in modern basketball 1 through 5. I would say those are kind of the three things, you know, that determine a lot for a lot of players. If you can't do all three, if you can't do any of those things, you're never going to see an NBA floor, you know. So I would, those are the three I've kind of emphasized. And in my experience talking to NBA scouts and just being with players as they go through the process, those would be the three that I would put the most value on.
What separates someone that gets drafted from someone that doesn't?
Obviously genetics, you know, a lot of who you are is determined by who your mom is and who your dad is. You know, I always say that's 80 to 90% of it for a lot of players, and then you've got 10 to 20% where you have control over it based on your work ethic and all those things. But I would say outside of that is just mentality. Like, do you have habits? Do you have a routine? A lot of players have all the God given ability in the world, but they don't have a routine. They don't know how to prepare their bodies. They don't, you know, they don't have a plan. They don't have habits. I think that's really what separates a lot of players. Is, you know, the best players I've been around, basketball is what shapes their day, and then real life is built around what they do basketball wise. And that's kind of a crazy way to live, but if you're going to do it at the highest level, that's kind of what it turns into.
What's the biggest misconception that high school players have about making the NBA?
I would say in general, uh, just how hard it is. I mean, 99% of basketball, pro basketball, is outside of the NBA. And I just think like players have no idea how good even the play. Like this year, I was in the Czech Republic. Like my starting point guard averaged 10 a game at Oklahoma. My starting two guard averaged 14 a game at Iowa State. And they were really, really good players, you know, and they never even sniffed the NBA. You know, they maybe got a couple NBA workouts, but just how good you have to be, especially if you're under 6'5".
What habits do every NBA player you've worked with have in common?
Being everyday guys. I think that's the main thing. Is it's your job, and you know you can't have bad days. You can't only show up every other day. Showing up to practice, showing up to work every day. You know, just a mentality like this is what I do. This is who I am until I'm done being a basketball player. And I think that's what holds a lot of players in general back, whether that's NBA or college guys or whatever. It's just you can't be a sometimes guy. You got to be an everyday guy.
Is talent enough anymore?
I don't think so. I mean, if it was just about talent, I mean, I think we can all go through a name of NBA players who are just there's more talented people, but their mentality, their toughness, their effort is why they're there. So no, I think anybody who's done basketball, we know a lot of really talented players who never really did much,
Just to being a consistent worker with habits.
without a doubt.
So developing elite players, you've trained NBA guys, pros, D1 athletes, some of Kentucky's top high school recruits or prospects. What separates elite prospects or players from just your average player?
I would say the things I said earlier about the NBA guys. Can you think the game? Can you guard one on one? Can you shoot the ball? And then what are your habits and routines? Like for me, no matter what level you're at, those are the things that determine your success levels.
What do players like LJ Holman, Brady Orem, Andrew Terry, and Braxton Keatley do that makes them successful?
I think they're everyday guys. They show up ready to work. They're not really excuses. Excuses aren't really a part of what they're about. And I think that that all those kids have in common is they've got parents who hold them accountable, and their parents are just as no nonsense as they are. I have great rapport with three of the four kids. I have great rapport with their families or know their families well. Um, you know, it's a family effort, and they show up and they do the things that they're expected to do, and they don't complain about it.
You also work with a lot of top girls in Kentucky. Do you coach like or train the girls and boys differently?
I say like a lot of my workouts, I'm always open about that. Is like you're gonna show up to a workout and it may be three boys and three girls, it may be three girls and two boys, and I just say, what I see? I see five basketball players, and I see five players who need to be able to pass, dribble, and shoot, who need to be able to think the game. So I really don't treat them a whole lot differently. One thing for me though is like I wasn't super familiar with the women's game when I started doing this stuff in Kentucky, and having I've being able to train really talented players, Claire Marshall, T Yeast, some of these really good players from around here. I've really been able to learn the women's game, the girls game a little bit better, and some of the nuance and what wins girls games versus boys games and that type of thing. But in general, basketball is basketball.
What impresses you the most about the current generation of girls basketball?
I think in general there's a it's I'm trying to think the best way to phrase it. I would say my favorite thing about it, or what impresses me, is that they see basketball as it's just as much of a lifestyle for them as it is the boys. Where like I was always kind of in the impression, or my experience with girls is like, yes, I'm good at it, but it's just something I do. Where like a lot of these girls now that I work with, like they live it, their families live it. The same thing I said about LJ's parents and Braxton's parents. I've got probably a longer list of girls' parents where these families are all in on what they're doing. This is what they want to do. They want to do it at a high level. They want to compete. They want to be the best. And I've really, the attitude towards it, even just since I started doing this around here in 2018, I've seen the shift, and that's not just here. I think that's everywhere with the growth of the WNBA and more, more women's basketball on television, college and whatnot. I think it's really kind of shifted. I think it's made the women's game more vogue, more cool, more popular.
With all the people or players you've helped reach college, what are some mistakes that recruits make today?
Mistakes I see, for me, is just thinking you've made it once you get that one offer. I think unless you commit and they take your commitment, like one offer doesn't really mean a whole lot, especially if you get that offer young, if you get an offer as a freshman or a sophomore, I mean, there's a chance with modern basketball, that staff's not even going to be there by the time you're ready to go. I think that. And I think the other thing is just kids who get a lot of hype around them when they're young. Well, young can be used loosely, whether you're in sixth grade or ninth grade, that because you were good then, you're just on this fast track or on some automatic track to do it at the highest level. And that's really just not the case, and kids I think, get too comfortable because of what people say online or what people are in their ear, or their high school coach is telling them. And, getting content it's been the death of many good careers.
What mistakes do you think see parents make, or what do you think parents may misunderstand about the recruiting process?
How good college basketball is. I talk to parents and even kids of parents I train, and I encourage them to go to as many college games as they can. And that's just not going to Kentucky. Like, go watch Bellarmine play. Go see Transy play. Go see Kentucky Wesleyan play, and just see the levels of basketball. Like, it's one thing to get on a roster, but go look at the starters at center or wherever it is, Thomas More, and you tell me which one of those players on the floor is your kid's better than, or who's your kid going to guard, and just getting some perspective, because it's basketball. There's a lot of really good players out there, and with how the internet is and all that now, recruiting in some ways has never been harder, but it's also never been easier because of just how easy it is to access information. I can go on Twitter right now and just search unsigned 2026, and I'm going to find 40 kids who are still unsigned. And that's good for those kids, but also it makes it harder, in general, because there's just so much access to players.
And what do you think actually gets players recruited?
I would say in general, obviously you have to have the academic profile. You got to handle your business. If you can't pass class, that's going to make it really hard. And then after that, I think, going back to stuff I talked about before, I think you have to be able to think the game. I think you got to be able to guard one on one, and I think you've got to be able to shoot. I think those are really the things that just drive basketball in general.
If you're a sophomore today in high school, what should their priorities be?
I think athletic development in general. That's just not weight room stuff. That's agility. That's mobility. It's core strength. I think really building up your body right. Just with how hard it is to get recruited. If we're talking about college recruitable athletes, being physically ready to play college basketball, where I talk about how many 21, 22, 23, 24 year olds there are. Your body's got to not just getting on the floor is an entirely different conversation. Physically, you just got to be ready to compete in practice. If you can't even compete in practice and be the 10th guy guarding the starting point guard because they just physically abuse you, college basketball is going to be hard. So I think the athletic development piece, and then I think shooting is the other thing. Like, just modern basketball, if you can't shoot, you can't play.
Absolutely. A little rapid fire. Your favorite NBA player you've worked with?
Probably now, Darren Peterson. I met Darren when he was in eighth grade, and just seeing him, he's an NBA player now. So I actually just saw him this weekend in Phoenix, but that would be my favorite one now.
Most underrated Kentucky player?
Ooh, that's a good question. Most underrated Kentucky player. Who do I really like right now? That's a good question. I don't know. That one.
Hardest worker you've ever coached?
Hardest worker I've ever coached. I would have to say probably Daquan Plowden is a guy I've worked with, the pre-draft stuff and whatnot. He just got a standard contract with the Sacramento Kings. Finally broke in the NBA. He's an everyday guy. I've never seen anyone who just shows up ready to work like him. I would put Braxton Keithley up there as one of the harder workers I've ever been around. I coached a guy named Jaron Holmes, who I trained in the off season, and he played for me this season. Played at Iowa State. He's also up there amongst the hardest workers I've ever been around.
What about the best shooter?
Ooh, best shooter. Right now, the kid Caleb Marshall plays at Lexington Christian LCA right now. He's up there in the state. He's one of the kids I've trained for a long time. I don't know if he's the best shooter I've ever worked with, but I'm not sure I've ever seen a better one, and that's including NBA guys and whatnot. Like his feel, his touch as a shooter, his ability to shoot it from half court, all that. He's elite.
Highest basketball IQ.
Highest basketball IQ. Whew, that's a tough one. Trying to think who. Malavai Leones, he's one of the pro guys I work with. He's on a two-way contract right now with the Golden State Warriors. High IQ player. He's Dutch, so European player, but probably the best defender I've ever been around. Really good at anticipating. He's like 6'9", long gangly arms, can guard like 1 through 4. Just high IQ for sure.
Your favorite drill.
My favorite drill. I would say anything with a live defender where they start on your shoulder. We do a lot where we're shoulder to shoulder, offense, defense, dribbling, and just having to play with somebody on your shoulder because I think that's where a majority of contact in basketball happens. So I think that one has the real life stuff with it.
Your biggest coaching influence.
Biggest coaching influence would be a tie between Aaron Niven. He was the guy who gave me my first GA spot at Spring Hill College, a D2 school in Alabama. And then my other one would be Ryan Pannone, who's the head coach at Arkansas State. I met Coach Pannone a while ago, probably 8, 9 years ago now. And he's obviously had a meteoric rise, but he's probably not only one of the best humans I've ever met, but the smartest basketball mind I've probably ever been around.
Dream NBA player to train.
Dream NBA player. Donovan Mitchell or Damian Lillard. More just because I want to pick their brains, like what their skill set is, their footwork, their dribble pickups, how they manipulate the ball. I learned a lot from, and a lot of how I teach it is based on studying them. So not necessarily that I'm going to help them at all. I think they would help me a lot because I just love to pick their brain.
One piece of advice for every young player.
I think leaning into watching film. I think the number one thing now is this generation of players, they watch Instagram clips and they watch YouTube clips, but I think like really watching basketball, watching the players you want to be like, watching how teams play, and just learning the game that way. I'm always amazed by the amount of kids who just really don't watch a ton of basketball, and I think there's a lot to be learned by just being a fan and watching.
Absolutely. Who is one Kentucky player everyone should know but isn't getting enough attention right now?
I'd probably lean into one of my guys I train, Chase Bentley, who also goes to LCA here in Lexington. He missed all last year, beat up, but I think he's going to surprise a lot of people this year. Was playing set to play with Midwest on the 3SSB circuit. He's finally clear, been back in the gym. I think he's I think he's going to surprise a lot of people. Really works at it. I think he's a really good player. But like we mentioned off camera, I'm only here half the year, so I don't. It's hard to speak on the whole state of Kentucky because I don't see the whole state of Kentucky. I just know what I see and the kids I work with. So I'm obviously a little bit biased and a little bit ignorant.
What should players be working on before high school basketball begins?
I would say I'm huge on mobility, like hip mobility, ankle mobility, all that. Being able to accelerate, decelerate, change direction. Obviously that helps on the defensive end, keeping people in front. But there's obviously huge benefits with that when it comes to finishing, shooting, catch and shoot stuff. I think a lot of kids have mobility issues and they're not good at accelerating and decelerating. And I think the formula for accelerating and decelerating is hip mobility, ankle mobility, and core strength.
How important is film?
I think film is huge. I think film is huge. Physically, our bodies can only do so much. You can only learn on the court and do so much on the court. Where your mind is going to stay fresher a lot longer. And so I'm a huge proponent of filming your workouts. You play 3-on-3 with your friends, film it. Watch game film, watch practice film, anything you can get your hands on where you can do self evaluation and be real with yourself. I think is huge because I think a lot of players I don't think they know what they actually look like, and what they perceive is going on in their head, and what's actually going on for a lot of players is two different things.
What about strength training? How important is strength training?
I think it's as important as anything I could teach skill wise. Your body's got to be ready to take the bumps and the bruises. And with how basketball is now between AAU and high school summer ball, and in Kentucky, the coaches have so much access. High school coaches have so much access to their players. You got to keep your body right and keep it fresh and be ready to take those bumps and bruises because it's kind of almost nonstop.
How much should kids actually, play ball versus training? Should you
I think
train
that
more or play a lot more?
I think they need to play more. I think if you're only playing 5-on-5, you're selling yourself short. I think if you're only playing 3-on-3, you're selling yourself short. If you're only playing 1-on-1, you're selling yourself short. If you're only training with me, you're selling yourself short. I always talk about it being like a circle or a cycle where each of those strength training, 5-on-5, AAU, high school, one, it's all goes together to make you a well-rounded player. I think if you lean into one entirely, you're missing, you're missing part of the spectrum.
Matt, we really, really appreciate you coming on. I think players and parents can get a lot, amount of out of this conversation. You've seen the game from every level. From Kentucky high school basketball to NBA players, and professionally overseas. Before we let you go, where can everyone follow your work?
Yeah, my Instagram is just Matt Jones Hoops. On Facebook, I'm Matt Jones Hoops, and then my website is just Matt Jones Hoops at mattjoneshoops.com. So my phone number is on there. Call me, text me, email me. Always looking to meet new people, new basketball opportunities, camps, training kids, or if anyone just wants some general advice, definitely want to be a resource to basketball in the Commonwealth.
How can players get involved with Matt Jones? I mean, yeah, Matt Jones Hoops.
Same thing. Hit me up on any of those. Mail me, text me, DM me, whatever. I'm pretty good about responding. I do basketball full time, so I'm usually if I'm not doing basketball stuff, my phone's not far from me.
Do you have any upcoming training or opportunities or events?
Yeah, I'm doing some workout stuff right now in Lexington. Starting to do a little bit more in Louisville. All that stuff I post on my website, on Instagram, and all that. But definitely always looking for young, motivated players who are ready to work.
If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to subscribe to Pure Prospects podcast on Substack and YouTube. Follow us across social media, Instagram, X, Substack here, and Facebook for podcasts, more interviews, rankings from Kentucky and beyond. For recruiting evaluation, player profiles, graphics, and recruiting assistance, contact Pure Prospects. I'm Cody Thomas. We'll see you next time on the Pure Prospects podcast. Man, thank you so much for coming on.
Appreciate
You
you
got a
having me.
great
Thank you.
story. Yeah, great story, man. Great, good stuff. Like you're doing really good stuff.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. I'm very blessed. I appreciate you having me on. I see the work you're doing, so I definitely have a lot of respect for what you do for kids around here.
I appreciate it. Have a good night.
Thanks.